back in the studio, former editor of Labour List, Peter Edwards, panel broadcaster, Lizzie Cundy, and editorial contributor of Turn Left Media, Ben McLean. Peter, you haven't been here before, have I? Thank you for coming in and joining us. Right, OK, protests have been kicking off. We understand there's been some violence in Bristol, just checking now, where there has been a woman arrested on suspicion of assaulting an emergency worker in Bristol. We also know there have been arrests in Liverpool. However, it does, on the whole, sound quite calm. So what do you make of what we're seeing with these protests up and down the country?
I'm really concerned. I think peaceful process is a basic right and it's part of democracy, but often it's going beyond that. We know that it's been infiltrated by the far right on occasion, not always, but on occasion. I've read many interviews with residents around the country saying they'll feel intimidated by what they see. And, of course, I understand that these present enormous challenges for the communities where hotels are based, but what we don't really yet have from the protesters is any suggestion for what will happen to the residents if a particular hotel is closed. Will they go into the next city, the county, the next borough? We need national government to deal with this, and I'm sure we'll come on to it, but, you know, the backlog is falling, but it's going to take time. What do you think should happen to them? I think Yvette Cooper's doing the right thing of trying to speed up the processing, and that's begun to happen. So then the need for hotels is reduced. The bills come down from about 5 point something to 4.5 billion. We need to remove people more quickly, but after they've been given a fair process, not with the Farageist kind of approach where we'll just chuck them out because it's too much hassle or we don't have the competence to deal with it. What about Nigel Farage's suggestion that we think that will be heard more about on Tuesday about detainment camps where they are put up and they are held until they're processed, and if they get immigration status, they are allowed to remain. If not, they're deported. I'm very worried about that. We don't know the detail yet, but that's often the case with reform. We don't know the detail at all. But when the British government has tried to do these slightly wacky schemes, send people to Rwanda, putting migrants on the Bibi Stockholm, they've either collapsed at the starting line or they've collapsed within days because of concerns over hygiene, cleanliness, human dignity, and occasionally breaking the law. By the way, if Nigel Farage wants to do a deal with the Taliban, send people back to Afghanistan, well, my goodness, imagine being a woman or a gay person sent back to Afghanistan. But how many women are coming over on the boats there? Well, I don't know, but that's the problem. They're not, are they? They are mostly fighting-age young men. I think nearly 90% of them are young men. We very rarely see women. I don't like that phrase, fighting age. You know, I'm a young man, I'm under the age of 50. Just because someone is under the age of 50 and male doesn't automatically believe they should be viewed with suspicion. If you don't like the phrase fighting age men, men between the ages of 18 and 34. But, I mean, it's the same thing. There are more men, of course, yeah, there are more men coming over. There's a huge percentage of more. But we need a fair process for men and women, old and young, gay and straight, and so on and so on. We need a fair process rather than Nigel Farage picking these bizarre agreements with the Taliban as his way forward. I can't see that working. OK. Lizzie, do you want to come back on that one?
There's so many points I want to come back on this. Have you actually been there at the protests? Have you actually spoken to the mothers, to the families, to the parents who are worried about, OK, I won't say military-age men from age 18 to 34, 35, in their vicinity that come from very different cultures? Our hotel that's near us is full of Afghani men that are loitering around. The school can't have the kids walk past the hotel anymore. Have you any idea of the concept of the worry for the parents? No, they're not, when you speak to them, far right. They're not the names they're being called, Nazis. They're worried parents, and I am one of them. My son himself played for Aldershot Football Club, and the change in that town is unbelievable. And to know the real worry, and I wouldn't actually say Rwanda. I mean, your government, I'm sorry, just dismissed Rwanda like that. That was a deterrent. This government haven't got anything in plan. What have they been doing? They have been in government for over a year. There is nothing in plan. They've no deterrent. They do not know what to do with these. Well, let me respond briefly, if that's OK. So I was in Aldershot earlier this summer. I'm from Essex. I've lived in West Yorkshire, so I hope whether viewers agree with me or not, they won't dismiss these as concerns of a London Liberal. Lived in Essex for 20 years. Aldershot, which you mentioned, has not changed at all. So I completely understand the concerns of residents. And I can completely understand the concerns of residents, and I addressed that earlier. But, you know, what is Labour doing? The backlog has been halved. There are fewer people in hotels. The bill for hotels has gone down a bit. You know, there aren't many other solutions, and these wacky things like sending people to Rwanda, I'll say what the government won't say, which is the government said rightly
the Rwanda scheme was impracticable, unworkable and deported 0 people. I agree with all of that. I'll add on top, the Rwanda scheme is evil. I've been to Rwanda. Outsourcing our responsibilities to an impoverished, war-torn country like that is wicked and indefensible.
OK. Ben, would you like to have a comment on this one?
Yeah, the idea that you can deter asylum seekers by putting in place harsher and harsher punishments just doesn't work. The Saudis literally shoot Yemeni refugees that come across their border, and it does not deter them.
To be fair, Nigel Farage hasn't suggested shooting people.
No, I agree, but the idea that you can use deterrence theory against people who most of the time don't even know what the punishment is for travelling across the border, it just doesn't work.
It does seem to be working rather well in America.
You'd have to
Poland.
You'd have to actually put that. Well, Germany, it was already falling. I know for a fact that in Germany it was already falling, but it fell by about 100,000 between 2023 and 2024, according to the German Federal Office.
Because they have toughened up their borders policy.
Well, this was before the current government came in. The most recent round of restrictions, it's actually come in after that. But it's kind of a fact that it doesn't work, and really, these people just fall through the cracks, and then they end up in off the books, shall we say. But I did just want to respond to the idea that these are fighting-age men, because this is something which really gets to me, because...
OK.
Just under half of asylum seekers are women and children. About 40% are women and children, according to the official Home Office accredited statistics.
40%
they are not
coming across in the boats.
That's
to
incorrect.
March 2025. No, this is 40% of people that make asylum claims. But to be fair, people in hotels
different.
are not all
That is
people
different.
who've travelled across on boats, right? You're right to say it's different, but we should be looking at the entire picture of asylum, not just the small boats. But if we want to look at the small boats, sure. But young men also deserve protection from war and destruction, right? A young lad, a young lad shouldn't be made to go to war against his will. Abdul didn't want to go to war against his will. He wanted to go to university. He wanted to study geography at university, and he was told that he could, by the Sudanese militias in Sudan, where he's from, he was told by the RSF that he could either fight or die.
Okay.
Those were his 2 options. He could either fight or die. And so, and by the way, the RSF are particularly brutal. They will kill whole groups of people
it's not a good
in order to make people turn across. And Abdul isn't a fighting age man. He was frightened when the riots happened outside of his hotels, and he was confused. He didn't know why they were there. He was like, the exact quote from the Refugee Council was, he said that we're not trying to steal anything. We're not trying to hurt anyone. Like, he didn't even know why the people were rioting outside the hotel. Like, he's a confused young boy. He's 24. That's
not a young boy. That's an adult. That is a fighting-age man.
That's a young man, a frightened young man who wanted to study geography.
Lizzie?
He didn't
I'm sorry,
want to,
there are many.
He's not a fighting-age man.
There's one.
You can't treat him like a fighting-age man the same way the RSF did.
Have you watched Patrick Christie go over when he was in France, looking at where they all are? And, you know, they're violent. Many, we don't know where they're from, their track record. They come over undocumented. It's frightening to not know who's in your village and town. I am experiencing myself, and I know the fear, and I speak to the parents who are also scared. And I'm sorry, 51,541 have been over since Starmer came to power. And I'm sorry, it's frightening because we do not know where they're from. We do not know their back record. They throw away their documentation.
Lizzie, what's your solution? What's your solution?
Because I agree with Nigel. I totally think that we need to do something about this. We can't keep going. We're only a small island. We're bursting at the seams. We've got UK territories that they can be processed on. We build Nightingale hospitals so quick. We do that there and get them processed and get this situation sorted, because we can't keep going on as we're going on.
You say they throw away their documentation. OK. What do you have to do to prove it, to gain refugee status in the UK? Do you know?
Well, hold on a minute.
What do you have to prove?
We've got to believe what they're saying to us, because they come over without any documentation. We see them throw it over on the channel.
Well, they get deported if they don't have proper documentation, because they've got to prove their case, right? In order to claim asylum under international law, you've got to prove not only that you are from somewhere where people are being persecuted, right? That's not enough. You have to prove that you individually have a well-founded fear of persecution, and your documentation is part of your case. Like, if you throw your documentation away, You can do that if you like, but the problem is you'll just be deported because it'll be harder for you to make your case.
But
you have to prove your case.
They're not being deported, are they?
Well, the ones who throw their documentation away are because they can't prove their case.
They're not being deported. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of it. And this is why people are up... This is why.
So
You're not listening. People are
protesting
because they are worried. It's changing the whole communities. We haven't got the infrastructure to cope with all this. It's not fair. We're not a charity. First order of any government is to look after its own people, and that isn't happening. And Keir Starmer is just not listening. He's not even watching. Why doesn't he go to the protests and talk to some of the people and try and understand really their fears and what's going on?
That doesn't mean accepting at face value, though.
Let's bring Peter back in this one. Peter, would you agree that at the moment this government do seem to have an issue with listening to what people are saying?
I think governments always need to listen harder, but I dispute the idea that there's any level of disinterest at all. I think migrants, NHS and cost of living are all the top concerns of voters. I think government hear that. And, you know, this week on the radio and TV, Angela Eagle, the Borders Minister, Dan Jarvis, the Security Minister, Yvette Cooper early in the summer, it's almost the number one thing they're talking about. And I think they know that for financial reasons, for moral reasons of human dignity, and because of voter concern, it's got to be dealt with. And that's why we constantly hear this pledge about closing all the hotels by the time of the next general election, 2029. So again, one can agree or disagree with Labour's approach, but the idea that they haven't taken sufficient interest is a nonsense.
Well, why did they say smashing the gangs? What gang has Keir Starmer smashed? He hasn't smashed any gangs, and this is the problem. He says these straplines, and he hasn't done anything, has he? And he's suddenly not saying that anymore. And where's Yvette Cooper? What? I mean, seriously, what do you say on what he's said about it? Because he hasn't smashed the gangs, and now these rival gangs are going for each other. It's so dangerous.
But Lizzie, look at the facts. There are fewer people in asylum hotels. The bill has gone down from just over £5 billion to £4 billion. The Home Office is processing claims faster. These are concrete facts. And I understand you're frustrated. I think the whole public, including me, is frustrated.
Yeah, it's going processing faster because they're letting them through. They're not...
No, but it is changing. It's changing, Lizzie. It is improving slowly, and it's going to take a very long time.
It's 50% up since this time
But Lizzie,
last
if you
year.
keep talking over people, then you don't hear the arguments they're putting to you.
But
well, I am listening. I'm listening to you both, and you're both wrong.
To be fair to Lizzie, she is outnumbered. I'm trying to keep her straight on the line one here.
Absolutely. Like, in terms of what Keir Starmer's done wrong here, his problem isn't that he's, like, letting too many people in. He's letting in people like Abdul, who deserve protection from the British state, and that's something we should be proud of.
We keep going back to Abdul. And why
it's part of our British values that we look after people, you know, and protect international law. However, he hasn't been defending migrants in his rhetoric, and that's what he should have been doing. He shouldn't have bought into this whole rhetoric of, like, oh, well, we'll stop the boats, and him and Rishi Sunak standing opposite each other at the last election doing the same thing. Well, I'll bring immigration down more than you will. No, I'll bring immigration down more than you will. It's created a one-party state where we've got three versions of reform running against each other. It's ridiculous.
So you think Keir Starmer needs to be nicer to migrants rather than smashing gangs?
Absolutely. I think there's good precedents for this, and I'll talk about it later on.
OK. Well, we will leave it on that one. On that